The morning unfolded like any other, or at least that's what I believed. I stood in the kitchen making coffee, the smell drifting softly through the still house as the first light slipped through the blinds. That's when Emily walked in. Her steps were slower than usual, her eyes flicking nervously around the room. Something in her presence immediately unsettled me. The air felt heavy, thick with an unspoken tension, the kind that signals an approaching storm. After years of marriage, I had learned to recognize these tiny cues. The quiet sigh, the hesitant glance, the refusal to look at me directly. They always meant something serious was coming. I took a slow sip of my coffee and let the silence hang between us, offering her space to finally release whatever she'd been holding back. Eventually, she spoke, her voice unsteady. I need to tell you something," she murmured, still avoiding my eyes, her lips pressed together like she was restraining the words that wanted to burst out. My heartbeat picked up, but outwardly I remained calm, controlled, unreadable. "What is it?" I asked in a neutral tone, acting unaware while quietly preparing myself for impact. She swallowed hard. Her eyes met mine for a brief, fragile second before dropping again. And then the words hit. I slept with someone else last night. I froze, letting the weight of confession settle. Then, almost automatically, I set my mug on the counter, looked directly at her, and said in the most even voice possible, "Congrats." Emily stiffened. Her face drained of color, and for a split second, she seemed unable to breathe. What did you just say?" she whispered, shaking. She expected shouting rage, maybe even tears. She expected an explosion. Instead, I stayed unnervingly calm, and that frightened her far more than any outburst would have. She suddenly understood that whatever hold she thought she had over me was gone. My composure wasn't weakness. It was power, and it left her defenseless. The room, though quiet, felt charged, every heartbeat loud in the silence. I let the moment stretch, giving her time to absorb my response. "Yes," I said evenly. "Congrats." I repeated it slowly, letting each word land with precision. It takes courage to be honest, even if it's long overdue. Her hands trembled. Her eyes widened as the truth of the situation clicked. She had braced for anger or heartbreak. But calm, cold, deliberate calm, she wasn't ready for that. It forced her to see herself clearly, her deceit, her arrogance, the betrayal she thought gave her leverage. And in that instant, the power between us shifted completely. "I'm not interested in dramatics," I continued, my voice smooth and steady. "I just want clarity." She shook her head, realizing her usual emotional tactics were useless now. I didn't think you'd react like this," she admitted softly, almost pleading. I simply nodded, sipping my coffee as though nothing earth-shattering had happened. The shift in control was absolute. She had assumed she controlled the narrative, that she could manipulate the moment, but she was now confronted with my unshakable calm, a quiet judgment far more crushing than anger. Her breath grew uneven as panic seeped in. "So you're not mad?" she asked, voice trembling. I tilted my head, meeting her gaze. "Mad? Maybe for a second," I replied slowly, "but your choices speak louder than any anger I could show." Color drained from her face. My calmness dismantled every defense she had left. She realized nothing she said could sway me anymore. Fear and shame swallowed her, harsher than any shouting match could have been. I leaned in just slightly, my voice low and precise. "You made your decision. Now you deal with it." The words hit her like a physical strike. Her confident mask collapsed. Her shoulders sagged. Her hands trembled as she tried to steady herself. The air felt electric. She finally saw what was happening. I wasn't reacting. I was taking control. She had lost every ounce of power. The chaos she expected never came. Instead, her betrayal met a cold, controlled authority that left her shaking and silent. She reached out weakly, trying to bridge the widening distance. I stepped back. "Don't," I said firmly, the single word forming a wall she couldn't cross. Tears gathered in her eyes as the reality sank in. Every lie, every excuse, every little charm she relied on, none of it mattered now. My silence carried more force than shouting ever could. She finally understood she had no hold on me anymore. The room seemed to close in on her as the enormity of her actions crushed down. She sat heavily, covering her face, trying to hide the rising panic. Her scattered apologies fell flat. They meant nothing. I sat across from her, calm and quiet, letting the weight of the truth settle exactly where it belonged. I appreciate the honesty, I said evenly, even if it came far too late. But understand, this isn't just regret. This is about trust, respect, and consequences. Her trembling body, her pale expression, said everything. She had no control left. My calm had stripped it all away. She was humiliated, exposed, and completely powerless. She tried again, offering excuses and half-explanations, but I let silence emphasize their emptiness. Actions speak louder than words. I said finally, my tone steady. And your actions have said enough. She knew she was cornered. No escape, no comforting narrative, no leverage. My quiet authority shattered every illusion she'd held. She sat there pale and shaking, trapped in the consequences she created. Time itself seemed to slow, stretching the moment into something heavy and unrelenting as her betrayal settled fully into the space between us. In the end, she was left trembling, speechless, and completely exposed. She expected a meltdown, a fight, maybe emotional chaos. Instead, she got a silent storm, calm but devastating, controlled but overwhelming. Restraint had done what anger never could. It left her stripped of pride, shaken, and entirely at my mercy. No shouting, no spectacle, just the crushing impact of quiet authority. Her arrogance, her manipulation, her hopes of provoking drama, all of it shattered in one still morning of truth. That day, everything shifted. All her attempt to charm, manipulate, or justify meant nothing in the face of calm, deliberate composure. She would never forget her own pale face, her shaking hands, or the silence that held her accountable. We both learned something that morning. Exposure and humiliation can be far more powerful than confrontation. And calm, controlled silence carries a terrifying authority that anger simply can't match. In the quiet of that kitchen, one lesson became undeniable. Betrayal may spark chaos, but it's a composed, steady response that commands respect, instills fear, and leaves even the guilty completely stunned.